A couple of years ago, I was in a meditation center, and I met Charles. And we struck up a conversation, as I normally do, for those of you who know me. And a few months ago, I went to an all-day workshop on the climate crisis that was facilitated by Charles and his daughter Joanna, who is on the staff of the Ecology Action Center. And I have been to many, many workshops in my life. That one was the best. So I'm really thrilled to have him here today. He is a retired Anglican minister, and his last church was St. Margaret's of Scotland in the north end of Halifax. You're on.
Thank you very much. Better turn myself on here.
Yeah.
There, now I'm on. Well, it's my great pleasure to be with you here today, and I want to thank you, Terry, and all of you for inviting me here to speak this morning. And I want to thank all of you for coming and showing up to hear about what is, frankly, an uncomfortable topic, and thank those who are joining us online. My hope is that together we can become more comfortable thinking about climate change and the state of our world, and in becoming more comfortable to think about it and talk about it, more likely to actually be part of the solution instead of just being part of the problem. So let's get into it. We can have the next slide. I'd like us to together answer, or at least finish this sentence. When I consider the state of the world these days, I think things are getting worser. Yeah, out of control. Difficult, yeah. Hot, whew, yeah. Sorry? Depressing, yeah. Scary, all of these things, for sure. Next slide. So, what feelings arise in us when we hear about these concerns? Fear, sadness, yeah, real sadness, real genuine grief. I think that's there. What else? Someone? Anger, yeah, no kidding, yeah. Worry, yes. Anxiety, yeah. Helpless, what do I do? And I think everybody's feeling these things. We don't talk about it because, who wants to bring this up at a cocktail party or something? By the way, I'm feeling anxious about the state of the earth, or hopeless, or... It's hard to talk about because it's a heavy topic. But I think it's there in almost everyone you meet. It's there in the background. So next slide. Just briefly, what helps us process these feelings? What do you do when you got this stuff coming up, these feelings we have? Sorry? Friends. Exactly. Friends, supportive conversation. Someone else? Education, learning more about it. Yes? Engagement, actually doing something. Yeah, that's a big one for me. When I go to a rally or do something, I feel a big relief because I've done something about it. What else helps? Yeah, doing even the little things, the lifestyle habits. Yeah, all those things. How about prayer and meditation? That's a big one for me. To me, it's almost like a counterbalance, the joy of being in the presence of the divine, and then the really tough questions. And there's a kind of an equilibrium there sometimes. At least that's the ideal. That's what we hope for. We don't always stay in the center. So yeah, we are all in this together. And it's worth acknowledging, I think, that our climate anxiety is only one anxiety amongst many concerns that we have. I mean, there are people here, I'm sure, who are maybe facing health concerns. Or maybe there's someone here who's having family troubles. Or maybe there's someone here who's really being hit by the affordability crisis and the cost of living. We all have things on our plates. And there are, frankly, those days when we really are going to say, I can't think about that right now. I have to think about my sick mother or whatever it may be, and that's fair. We all have lives, and this is one issue among many issues in our lives. And at the same time as it's this pervasive anxiety, it's also kind of easy to forget about it, to ignore it. It's a beautiful morning, the birds are chirping in the trees, and the sun is shining, and, it's great. It's a little bit like you've been to the doctor who's given you a bad diagnosis, cancer or some awful thing, and you've got no symptoms. You feel great. So I'm just going to think about that later, right? Because I'm just going to enjoy this day. So aren't we kind of all of us, I think, in that in-between zone where sometimes we're thinking about it, a lot of the time we're really not thinking about it. We're thinking about other things. So one thing that helps me deal with this pervasive anxiety is knowing more about it. Again, the analogy of a diagnosis. You get a bad diagnosis from the doctor, you want to know all about it. Okay, tell me, what's the prognosis? What's the treatment? What can I expect? What are we dealing with here? You want to know all the information. And I think it's the same with this climate anxiety, because for many of us, it's kind of this vague, apocalyptic dread that we really don't want to look at in the face. But by actually taking a hold of it, actually looking at it, actually learning some of the facts, things that we do know, and actually about the things that we don't know, then we know what we're dealing with. Then we know, okay, this is going to be a challenge, this is going to be hard, and then we kind of know where we stand. So let's take some time just looking at the situation. And I want to share with you 3 hard truths. These are 3 hard truths that I think everyone should know. In fact, I'm thinking I should write an article, an op-ed for the paper. 10 things everyone should know about climate change. Well, here are 3. And the first is what's called the Keeling Curve. Back in 1958, Charles Keeling took it upon himself to measure the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, I'm going to make an assumption here that everybody knows that carbon in the air is making Earth get too hot. We all have heard that before. And the carbon really shouldn't be in the air, it should be in the ground, but we keep putting it in the air, and it's getting too hot. That's the short form. So he started measuring, before this was ever a concern, he started measuring in 1950 every single day. Next slide. Oh, back a slide. Yes, he went up to Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii, way above all the changing weather day by day, where the air is pure and clean, and that's where he took those measurements. And he did it faithfully every single day from then until he died in 2005. And then his son Ralph continued on every single day, taking this very, very accurate, very, very careful measurement of the carbon dioxide. And next slide, the result is what's known as the Keeling Curve. So you can see in the box, there's an up-down. That's what happens every year. Every year, in the spring, it goes up, and then in the fall, it goes down, and then every year there's this cycle. And that's because there are more plants in the northern hemisphere than the southern hemisphere. Very simple thing. But if you put them all together, you get this blue line going from the bottom left up to the upper right. So this is the famous Keeling Curve. Now, what can you observe about this? Well, first of all, I just said, it goes from the bottom left. It's going up, right? What else do you notice about the curve? Yeah, it's not a straight line. It's actually going up faster now than it was in 1950. It's going about twice the speed that it was in 1958. So it isn't just a straight line, it is a curve. And the other thing to notice about it is that there are no bumps. You look at, in 1958, when it started, it was at, the amount of carbon dioxide was at 318 ppm. So that's fine. In 1988, so that's about the middle of the graph, it was at 350, which has been called the safe level. Today, it's at 422, which is significantly above the safe level. And here's the thing to think about. It hasn't been that high in 14 million years. Well, let's just take a minute to let that sink in. That alone, if nothing else, should alert us to that this is actually an emergency, that this is a crisis. 14 million years? I can't even conceive of 14 million years. So this is beyond off the scale. This is out of the book and down the floor and across the hall. This is really extreme where we are with that. And, we've done a lot about climate change. We had the Kyoto Protocol. We had the famous Paris Agreement, 2015. There's this picture, I would have had the slide, of all the people on the stage holding their hands up like this. It was a terrific breakthrough. All the countries of the world agreed, we're going to do this, and we're going to cut the emissions, and we're going to build solar power, and we're going to do windmills, and we're going to decarbonize the whole thing. That was 2015. Well, has had no effect. There's no bump. It's still today going up and going up faster than it's ever gone up. This is a tough problem. And at this point, I had a whole section of the sermon, which I threw out because we would have been here for an hour, about all the implications of that in terms of the global economy, in terms of social justice, like who's responsible, all this stuff. Suffice it to say that our carbon economy is a juggernaut. That is to say, it's a big old thing which is tough to stop. It has terrific momentum. So that's the first hard truth. The second hard truth is that there is a delay in the effects of carbon in the atmosphere. When you put a pot of water on the stove and turn it up high, it doesn't boil right away. It takes a few minutes, and then eventually it comes to a boil. Or every spring, and summer, June 20th is the longest day of the year, but that's not the hottest day of the year. The hottest day comes like about 6 weeks later, July, August. There is always a time lag. And so, same with carbon in the atmosphere. There's a time lag, but it's not a year, it's decades long. So that means that the things we are experiencing today, in your driveway, I noticed that coming in. Kind of ironic that I was to preach this on July 23rd, and my sermon illustration ended up canceling the sermon. Anyways, it's happening. Floods, storms, droughts, heat waves, all the stuff that's happening today. This is all a result of what went up there in the 1980s, in the 1990s. And so what we're putting up there today is going to be affecting things decades into the future. So this second really uncomfortable truth is that even if we could somehow magically make emissions go to zero today, the so-called global weirding, it's going to get weirder for a long time to come. That's a hard thing to accept, but that's the fact. Everyone needs to know these facts. It's going to get worse. That's what we're dealing with. We're in for a very rough ride. Hang on to your hats, or as one guy said, hold my beer. We're in for a rough ride. And we need to know that. We need to plan for that. Governments and others are starting a little bit to get that, but you can't help but feel that they haven't really got it, what we're into. The third hard truth is that in the climate system, there are, call them tipping points or feedback loops, self-reinforcing patterns where what happens causes the thing that makes what happens happen. So, for example, we could have the next slide here. Wildfires. We've heard Canadian wildfires this summer was twice the last record, which was only a few years ago, 6 times the average number of wildfires. And what did they put up into the atmosphere? Carbon dioxide, which causes, you see how it goes around in a circle. So that's a feedback loop. That's a positive sound very positive, a self-reinforcing feedback loop. Another example would be that probably within the next 5 or 10 years, we'll have what's called the Blue Water Event, where at the North Pole, it will be ocean. Santa Claus is going to have to trade his sleigh for a boat. That's a change in our thinking. And ice reflects the heat of the sun. Water absorbs the heat of the sun. Again, a feedback loop that self-reinforces. A third one, there are many, many. A third is the permafrost, that frozen ground in Siberia and the Canadian North, over the centuries has locked up an enormous store of carbon. And as that begins to thaw, that's all going into the atmosphere. So that's another thing. And there are many more. So we face this terrifying possibility that all these different self-reinforcing loops will that they will cascade together, that they will conspire together and push the whole Earth past a tipping point into what's called the hothouse Earth. And it's a terrifying possibility. How likely is that? Well, we don't know. And there's an army of scientists out there trying to figure out how likely it is, trying to narrow the uncertainty, but we still don't know. Ready for the next slide. This is my own graph that I put together about where we're at in the world today and the things that we don't know. We're on a slippery slope, but we don't know how slippery it is. We don't know how far along the slope is that point of no return. Right now, we're at 1.2 degrees of heating. And probably, if we could keep it at that, we'd be okay. But we don't really know that. There's a possibility, it's unlikely, but there is a possibility that we're already past the point of no return. Probably not, but we can't be sure about that. As the current policies and promises of governments and industry looks like the best estimate, and I've read so much about this, so much debate back and forth, but it looks like the best we can hope for is somewhere between 2 and 3 degrees. We're not going to keep it to 1.5. We're looking at least 2, something above 2. At that point, it's more than a little risk. It's a significant risk of going over that edge. Business as usual, which is what, the oil companies and everyone else is planning on, the plastics companies and all that will take us to 4, 5, or 6 degrees. And at that point, it's a certainty. At that point, down we go. Climate catastrophe, hothouse Earth. And it's not something that there will be repercussions for centuries to come, but the actual change is exceptionally rapid. It will happen in decades. It's tough. It means that very few of the young people today will live out their lives, if that happens. That's a tough thing to think about. It means that of all these beautiful species of birds and plants and trees and ocean life and so on, there will be a huge extinction. We struggle to save the piping plover or the blue whale or the right whale, but think about 30%, 50%, 80% of the species gone forever. Mass extinction to rival any of the ones from ancient geological history. So how much of a risk is that? How slippery is the slope? How far along are we? We don't know. So let's just pause for a moment. We could have the next slide. How's everyone doing? I don't want to clobber people, but maybe I do want to clobber people. This is tough stuff. This is really hard. And I have a hard time not getting emotional, as you can tell, talking about it. These are, our kids, our grandchildren. It's hard. To actually look this stuff in the face is really a challenge to our own emotional health, our own mental health. It's hard. So we need to be gentle with ourselves. We need to be kind to ourselves. Take our time. Because you can't just take this in on a Sunday morning, okay, that's done, now I get it. No, it's a process. You take a little bit, and then, digest that, and you take a little bit more, and then, digest that. It's like grief. Anyone who's lost a loved one knows you can't do the grieving in a day. It takes a lifetime. And like grieving, it's intermittent. You laugh and play and have a nice day, and then something, and you're back into it again. You dip into it for a while, deal with it, and then you move on. You make breakfast, and you listen to some nice music or talk to your friends. It's intermittent. It's the way we have to do things. We can't do it constantly. I had a great summer this morning playing with my new sailboat. My son got married. And frankly, I didn't think a lot about climate change. I was like, I'm going to take a break from this stuff. I had a real holiday. And I think that's how we have to be gentle with ourselves, to take a little, but do what we need to do to be well. So take breaks, and know that it's a process that's going to take a long time to really let these truths sink in. And the other thing is to do it together. Like grieving, it's the reason we have funerals where we come together to grieve instead of trying to grieve individually. We need to share these things. So to find someone who understands, someone you can talk to about this, someone who's also going through this process, it's better together. One of my mentors in all this is the wonderful Joanna Macy. Some of you maybe know Joanna Macy. She's an American Buddhist. She's now in her 90s, and she's been working with this stuff for decades, with coming to terms emotionally with the state of the world. And Joanna Macy says, to walk the path of awareness, we have to walk arm in arm. We have to walk it together, because on the left and on the right are two big ditches that you can fall into. And the one ditch is paralysis and despair. Too much, I can't face it. It's not real. The other ditch is panic and fanaticism. This is the only thing that matters, and I don't have time for you, and I don't have time for you. And no. That's not going to do it either. Somehow we have to walk this path without paralysis and despair, without panic and fanaticism, but to keep together. That's our task. Yeah, and do the things that give us joy. Do the things that feed our souls, whether it's coffee with a friend or playing with your sailboat or whatever, because if we go crazy, we're not going to help the earth. Life on earth needs us to be well. So that's our first thing. We need to do whatever it is to be well. Spend time with friends, knitting, whatever it may be. We need to do those things that sustain us. So, who here is ready to talk about hope? Shall we spend a little time talking about hope? I think it's a good thing to talk about. And I want to, next slide here, talk about how there are different ways to understand this concept of hope. Because we hear a lot of optimism, techno-optimism, and it's what I would call passive hope. Oh, everything will be okay. Technology will solve all our problems. You're going to get carbon capture and get the carbon dioxide out of the air, and we're going to have more windmills, and it'll be fine. We've always solved everything else before. Or if you're of a more religious bent, God will take care of everything. God wouldn't let anything bad happen. To me, this isn't really hope. It's mere optimism, which really doesn't have a strong foundation. It doesn't have deep roots. But the kind of hope I'm interested in, hope which is a commitment. Hope which is our commitment to do the little that we can do to help make our hoped future become a reality. That kind of hope is like an allegiance. Like, I'm on this side. I'm going to pitch in this way. I am committed. This is the direction of my life. This is part of my purpose. So yeah, I'm hopeful. I wouldn't be here this morning if I weren't filled with hope. Now, I wasn't always hopeful. About a year and a half ago, I went through a period of genuine climate despair. If you would have asked me, I would have said, what's the point? We're all doomed. And then I realized that I had fallen into the trap of what's called binary thinking. That is, win, lose, succeed, fail, all or nothing. Are we going to make it or not make it? But in fact, reality is never binary. It's always a matter of degree. However good it is, it could be better. No matter how bad it is, it could be worse. Whatever we do makes a difference. We're going to muddle through. We don't get to fail. We're going to move forward no matter how tough it may be. And in our struggles, every degree of climate change makes a difference. Like 4 degrees is worse than 3 degrees. In fact, 4.1 degrees is worse than 4.0 degrees. Every little bit is going to make a difference for whatever millions of years to come. Well, if that's not motivational, I don't know what is. Everything we do makes a difference, from little things to big things. So that makes me hopeful. That's a commitment. We can all make a difference. We are all a part of this thing that's happening. I'm also hopeful because not only are there tipping points in the natural world, but there are what you call social tipping points. When an idea, which is first held by just a few people, kind of catches on, and suddenly, bingo, everyone gets the idea, and suddenly it's obvious to everyone. And when that happens, things can change very quickly, and social norms can change very quickly. I remember, some of you here I'm 68, some of you are my age, you're older. Remember what it was like around cigarettes back in the day? I remember smoking in my classroom in university. I remember smoking in hospital. If I walked into a daycare today and lit up a cigarette, they'd say, that guy's psychotic. Like, what's wrong with him? Everyone knows it's just the air we breathe. It's an assumption. It's a massive change. We think of back in the day, if you had a couple of drinks and were driving, you probably shouldn't really do it, but we didn't really worry about, now it's like a major crime. You don't do that. We know that. Or what about the roles of women? Remember the days when for a woman to become a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, it was really super tough. Not that long ago. So things can change. When an idea's time has come, there's that social tipping point when suddenly it's obvious. Nelson Mandela said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." That gives me hope, because I feel like it's coming. And every time we have another flood or fire, it pushes the needle a little bit further. And if I can push the needle myself with a sermon that's going to make me feel good. Push us toward that brink when we'll reach that point where the whole society suddenly has a different attitude about nature. And even at that point, even right-wing federal politicians who shall not be named, even people like that wouldn't dare to ignore it, because it'll be everyone. It's coming. I think we're really on the edge, and things are changing very quickly. Attitudes are changing unbelievably faster than I thought possible. So it's happening. We're part of this amazing flux, this amazing change that's taking place. So, let's have the next slide. No, one after that. We're going to skip this one and come back to it. This is what I think. This is our call. This is the strange place we are during this time of transition. This is our call to, on the one hand, hold together in a creative tension, on the one hand, the overwhelming urgency of our situation, and on the other hand, our own unassailable inner peace and joy, and the love we share in community. You know, when I'm in meditation, I know everything is going to be fine. God has things in hand. There's a larger narrative here that perhaps we can only dimly glimpse, but God is doing something. Something is going on here. We may not see it, but there's a forward motion. That's my hope. What we're hoping for is nothing less than the transformation of human consciousness. Humanity evolving into another stage. It's what Joanna Macy calls the great turning. I think it's one aspect of what Jesus called the coming of the kingdom of God. When Jesus spoke of the coming of the kingdom of God, sometimes he spoke in apocalyptic terms. I was reading in Matthew this week when he's talking about the sun will be darkened and the wars and that kind of language. And then at one point he says, don't worry, these are but the birth pangs. Birth pangs. So we're kind of like, it's life in the birth canal, there's a lot of pressure. And we can't really see what's going on, but that's where we are. We're in the birth canal. And it's a tough place to be. But there's a direction to it. That's where we are. So I'd like to end on a more practical note. These are big metaphysical, conceptual things. Let's bring it down to what can we do? And walk on, so that was a great sermon. What am I going to do about it? So there are all kinds of things we can do. There's no end of things. Someone said we've moved from climate denial in our society to climate paralysis. Nobody's denying climate change these days. But generally it's like, well, what are you going to do? I don't know. I'm stuck. Huh? Well, there's lots we can do. And we're ready for the next slide. I think it's the next one. And one after this one. Perfect. So in terms of what we can do, there's really two categories. There is what I can do about the way I live and my personal lifestyle. And then also there's pushing for systemic change. That is, change in government, change in business, change in policy, change in the way the world works. And it's not either or. We need both and. So let's start with the individual. What is something... I'll start, but we can just pipe up. Something you've just done recently that you hadn't done before, or something that, hearing this sermon, that you're going to do when you walk home. I came by bus. I could have come by car, and I had a lovely bus ride. That's a little thing. What else? Personal lifestyle things can we do? Or things that you have done or I think you're going to do? Less shopping. Yay! Something else. Fly less, absolutely. Think twice before getting on an airplane. Now, I still get on an airplane sometime. My mother's 98. She's in Toronto. I want to see her, so I go once in a while. I get the cheapest flight, and it's nonstop, and, squeeze myself in one little bag. So it's never all or nothing. It's always a matter of better, not worse. We don't have to be perfect, but if we do something, what else can we do? Yes, using your laundry line. I was looking at my neighbors. What's wrong with them? We've got our laundry on the line, and they're using their electric dryers. Like, what? Come on, guys. That's a simple thing. What else? Right. Exactly. Consolidating your shopping trips. So it's all, when you're thinking about it, you find these little opportunities all the time. Things you can do. Michelle and I put up solar panels on our house. And it's a pretty good deal. If you're one of the lucky people like me, we can afford to do that and then be paid back over the years. It's going to pay us off in the long run, and you can feel good. We're generating, there's a little graph on my app on my phone. It shows how much energy you're generating. That's got to feel good. Something else? What else can we do? Yeah? So changing our buying, instead of a great big jug of laundry soap that's a lot of water, just a little, yeah. Local organic, absolutely. We've got all these wonderful farmers markets around here. Yeah, or even growing your own food. The list is almost endless. And every time you do even a little thing, it feels good. And you think, okay, well, maybe I can do something else. And so we're part of that transition. We're part of that movement, part of that revolution. But just changing our own lifestyles is not enough. The system needs to change, because we're all still dependent on cars that burn fuel. Every time I get in the car, I think, oh. Every time I put gas in, I think, oh, you know. What else are you going to do? Like, we're captive by the systems. So there are things we can do to change the systems. Any thoughts about that? EAC is fantastic. Yeah. Joanna is doing, and the others are there. You know, that's a huge operation. There are all kinds of, some 20, 25 full-time staff, hundreds of volunteers, thousands of members, and you can volunteer. They send out a thing every week. Today we're looking for someone to fold envelopes or whatever, you know, or put up posters. Or you can pitch in, and they're fun people. It's super fun to do. So there's something you can do. That's working on systemic change. And you can donate. Nature Trust, absolutely. There's a whole list of groups that you can donate to, and a donation to a group has huge impact. Nature Trust, EAC, I have a whole list of them. Friends of the Earth, David Suzuki, that's a good one. Lead Now is doing some good stuff around climate awareness. There's not hard to find them. I mean, I can give you them, but you can find these things. Donating to the environmental groups is a huge impact in terms of systemic change. What about voting? I won't ask for a show of hands, but I'm going to say, is there anyone here who doesn't vote? That's huge. And getting involved in politics, messy, garbagey, imperfect, irritating politics, is huge. Look at the party that's doing the best for this, because they're the ones that make the laws, and that has a huge effect on change of society, pushing us over into this kind of a revolution that we're a part of. Writing a letter. One individually composed letter has as much impact as a whole petition. It's huge. And when they write back and they don't really answer your question, write them again and say, you didn't answer my question. It has a huge... Politicians are very sensitive to what people are thinking. And you can have a huge influence on them. Befriend them. I'm kind of friends a little bit with my mind goes blank, our MP here for... No, sorry, I'm down at the other end here. Anyway, I commended him for something. I sent him a nice letter. He said, no one ever commends me for doing good things on climate change. And we had this nice little dialogue, so I feel like I know him. I feel like he maybe is going to listen to me a little bit. Like, befriend these guys. They make the choices. You can do it. Andy, yeah. I'm kind of warming up to him a little bit, although not really. But anyway, you can have a huge impact with a letter, an email. And cut and paste is fine, but the individually composed is huge. Come to, September 15th. Mark that in your calendar. Friday, September 15th, the students are doing climate strike for climate. And again, and it's going to be a big one this year. So come along. It's super fun. If you've never been to a rally before, it might be scary. Come with some friends, come with your girlfriend. It's always easier. But it's super fun, and it's super energizing. Come along. It's amazing. That's systemic change. Joanna Macy says, what a time to be alive. We get to be part of this revolution. We get to be part of this amazing transformation that's happening. We get to make a difference now that's going to resound through centuries to come. It's an amazing time to be alive. Can we go back to the slide with Gandalf? There he is, our old friend. This isn't the quote from the movie, but it's the quote from the book that Frodo says to Gandalf, I wish it need not have happened in my time, finding this horrible ring. Old wise Gandalf says, so do I. So do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. We are living in a very special time. We are a special generation. May God fill us with grace and love and joy and inspiration and power to be a part of God's work taking place in the world today. Amen. Thank you so much for having me here. I've said a lot of things today. I've raised a lot of questions, and I certainly welcome continuing the conversation following our service. Oh, and I will send links to some great videos and some great books, which will go up onto the BUC website. So watch for that coming up. Thank you.